Alright, so this is my shrimp tank desktop setup, and wanted it to look like this picture here on my iPad, clown face. And so I bought a head at Hobby Lobby made out of styrofoam, and then I got some spray foam and I put saran wrap over the styrofoam head and then sprayed it with water so it wouldn't stick too much to it. Then I started forming the styrofoam around the head, and once I got all of it filled in, tried to not fill in the eyes and the mouth, and then I sprayed it with water, gave it a mist around the head and let it sit for like 3 or 4 minutes so that it would build like a skin around it. And once it did that, then it wasn't too tacky, so I could actually put my hands on it and form it better. Just kind of patting it down here. Then I used hot glue to make the teeth, and what I did was I made like little teardrops on this piece of glass, and when it was dry I cut the ends off, like the end of the teardrop. So once I had all those pieces cut, then I placed them around the mouth so that I could I used super glue to put them in place. As you can see here. Added more spray foam. Started to expand. So now he has more of a defined nose, cheeks, and then also his nose and the eyebrows. Now that the teeth are filled in and they're covered with spray foam, I let that dry, and I used a razor blade to cut down some of the spray foam, and then I used a grinder bit just to kind of sand it off, using the knife and cutting it a little bit more. Grinder bit on the eyebrows. Put the first coat of white paint on it, and then regular white dry lock. I liked how it looked right there. It kind of reminded me of that movie The Mask. So here I'm putting the, is it called balloon red, on the nose. And once I was doing this, I realized it was too much of a bright red compared to the maroonish, reddish pink color that was on the image, and that I was really liked the color palette that was in the image of the clown that I showed you. So now I've got a soldering iron. It's got a razor blade, so it heats the razor blade tip, and I was able to use that to define the teeth. Do the eye sockets and fill them in. More spray foam. So here I'm putting the frog tape around the eyes so I can do the eye paint part. I had to go back and add white to the blue and mix it for the second coat. I didn't give him a forehead on the first run, so later on you'll see I had to put some, I had to give him a forehead, do some more spray foam. So I got the eye section filled out. And here I've never made a mask before, so I was playing around with different ideas on how to create the eyeballs. Here I was just trying to create a shadow effect around the jaw, the back part of the mask, which I really liked. So here I used the grinder bit again to go around and shape the nose. And so I got the Dremel tool and put like a little sander bit on top of it, and I started shaping out the side of the head, the temples. So after that, I decided to work on the eyeballs a little bit. So I got these glass-like circles from Hobby Lobby, and I took a printout of the eyeballs, printed it out to size, and then I printed it out black and white. I guess you could print it out color, but I did black and white, and then I got some water-based acrylic paint. I used that on all of the paint here except for whenever I use dry lock. At the very end I use dry lock. And for the white part of the mask, then I took the piece of paper that had paint on it and I put it in the freezer for like 3 minutes. So once I had the dry cutout eyeball, placed it on the back of the glass circle and took the Mod Podge glue and applied it. And then I inserted the eyeballs into the eye sockets. So I like how that looks. Those eyeballs look really realistic. They look scary. So I was really happy with how that one turned out. Putting the forehead on. Again, I just did the spray foam and sprayed it with some water and then waited 4 minutes. And then after I was done, I started to shape the forehead. The forehead looks really boxy, almost like a not Homer Simpson, but the Simpsons type head, probably like Bart's head. But I knew that I was going to put hair on it, so it really didn't matter. The shape of the top part of the head, wasn't too concerned about that, or just in general wasn't really too concerned about making things perfect. Then I started in on the eyebrows, put some frog tape on there, drawed out what the eyebrows look like, cut them out, and then I made this maroonish, pinkish red color. I actually tried to, and then eventually I ended up buying one of those tubes it was pinkish, reddish acrylic paint. But I was happy with it, but I would have liked to have it match more, but put some frog tape on top of the glass eyeballs because I wanted to finish out the eye sockets, the blue. So and I decided to use the new red color that I had to give the nose a second coat as well as around the mouth. Touching up the areas where I didn't get enough white paint on the face. I started to paint the teeth. I actually did take some black paint and put it on the outside of the teeth before I painted it white, so that way it gave it out of the teeth. So here I started to build the desktop aquarium, and I was just measuring it out. I think that was 1/8 of an inch at the bottom of each side of the glass top. Started to apply the silicone within those areas that I marked. Finished applying my silicone glue and took the frog tape and secured it to the sides so keep it in place. Then I gave it a final bead of silicone on the inside corners. So then I took a sandwich bag, those plastic sandwich bags that are reusable, and I took some foam and wrapped it in saran wrap and put it inside that reusable plastic bag and I sprayed it down with water first so that the spray foam wouldn't stick to it. So I just filled the bag up, and then after it dried, I took it out, and that's what I was going to use for the tongue. So here I'm just testing out what the mask looked like inside of the aquarium. So I went back to shaping out the tongue, and it fit into the back. It fit in there pretty nicely right off the jump. So all I needed to do next was paint the tongue, and I really was happy with how things turned out with this. Even though it didn't look anywhere near like the picture, it was my own way of doing it. So I started to paint the tongue, and I put clear dry lock on the tongue. I've never used clear dry lock before, but I love it. It just really, I don't know, it just gave it more of a polished look. I put 2 coats of that on. Just used a regular paintbrush in the beginning, and then went back with a smaller paintbrush to get the areas where I couldn't get to that were more precise. So I took a joint connector, and I planned on using the bubbler to have 2 outlets for the bubbler, so it would have 2 spots where bubbles would come out. Originally I was going to do it and make him have ears, but I actually forgot to make the guy ears, and I thought about going back and putting ears on, but it was just, I'd already spent enough time on this. And not only that, but I was running out of space width-wise, so it would have been cool to have this bubbler. So I decided to put both tubes, one underneath the tongue and then one on top of the tongue. So here I am making I feel like I'm doing taxidermy here. It's kind of creepy, right? So I took some plastic netting material and mapped out the areas on each side of the temple, sides of the head, for where I wanted to put this Java moss. And I used some green floral thread, and I just thread the patches of Java moss to the net. After I did that, then I started to get the hair algae and fill in the other spots. I almost feel like I was making, it's a hairpiece, right? People wear hairpieces anymore? Not a bad hairpiece. Who would have thought? So there's this patch of head, carpet head. And I use super glue to glue it down. I used bioactive soil and sand. And placed a few rocks in there and then began to facet the mask down inside the tank. Started to add water. So after I added the water, I started to add in some subwassertang. I wanted it to be full of subwassertang on top of the substrate and on the sides. So here's what it looks like after everything's done. I was just really happy with how things turned out. So I added some shrimp to it. I was going to use black devil shrimp with orange glowing eyes, but I wasn't going to have them ship it when we've had below 0 temperatures here. Here's one of those shrimp that's on top of the tongue, which is exactly what I wanted them to do. Hang out there, subscribe, like it, share it. See you next time.